Great speech. Great presentation.
To deploy it are going to be critical components. Now, this is a curious metaphor for what technology can do. These things are pretty fantastic. The reason I wanted to talk about this in context of the tech is because what these cars are doing are things that humans cannot do. Like drive 300,000 miles without having an accident, autonomously. Well, that's not exactly true. It's been in one accident, but it was because somebody rear-ended the car that was driving it. But it's a perfect example of how computers can just do a much better job at certain types of tasks than people can, because it can be automated, because it can just compute more inputs at a given moment in time. You can sit there and calculate 1 million different factors per second, whether it's that laser spinning on the roof or it's the GPS sensors on board. It can look down the road and figure out if there are brake lights 1.5 miles up the road in a given lane of traffic and change lanes accordingly. It actually does this. And of course, it can do that because the laser sits a little higher and it can see a much better field of vision down the road. But ad serving technology today and what's actually being developed for tomorrow is really going to focus in on this aspect of how do we automate what we're doing with data, how does that inform the algorithms that we're deploying in our bidders, and most importantly, how am I rendering the right creative to the right user at the right time on the right device. So last component here is storytelling. And this is, in my mind, the most important that we're talking about up here, actually. Because the creative, at the end of the day, is what matters the most in how we deploy a given campaign. And we know this. Yet, and you can disagree with me, but I think historically and still today, creative budgets are the most underfunded aspect of display, of digital. Maybe not in specific businesses, but broadly speaking, as an average, way underfunded. I still see lots of campaigns that have 1 or 2 creative concepts. And yet the technology that's being developed and deployed assumes that we're going to have even more creative liquidity, which isn't yet materializing across the board. And so that's more of just a call out to everybody here to start thinking about this, that to create the right experience for a consumer requires and will require more investment in what you're doing with creative. Full stop. We talked about this earlier. Storytelling isn't just about delivering one of these, or the phone in my pocket, or the television set, or the tablet, whatever it might be, but it's thinking about stories across those devices as the consumers have shifted their behaviors to do certain tasks specific to a given device. You know, I haven't really bought anything on my phone except for apps, books, music, right? The things that tend to stay local to my phone. But I sure as heck do a lot of research on my phone. And then ultimately we end up getting on my laptop, to complete a purchase. And yet it's very difficult to reference all the content that I consumed, all the adverts I may have seen on my phone, to that eventuality on the website, on my laptop. But I want to talk about the basic tenets of storytelling. There's some good research out there from Latitude that supports this as well. That people want very specific things when it comes to telling stories. They want immersion. They want to feel like they're a part of it, right? And that's more of the relevancy type of story. They want interactivity. They want to participate. They want integration. Right? Back to this idea that if I have an experience on a given device, I want that to kind of carry it into the next one, not start over from scratch. All right? Knowing that I've interacted with the story in a given way should inform what happens on the next device. And then finally, the aha is impact. Of course it has to have impact. So I want to show an example of something that we deployed. It's a little bit dated, but I love it because it pretty much has assembled every piece of kit of online display in a single creative concept. And that was when we launched, or helped launch the Skyfall movie premiere. If you could kick to the video for me, please. So this creative concept begins with the YouTube masthead. And that masthead, actually, when the video starts here, could you guys backstage do the video, please? There we go. Cool. Okay, YouTube masthead, call to action. I can actually scan a QR code with my mobile device, which kicks off a video game. And the phone actually becomes the controller for the video game. So this person has seen this YouTube masthead on their laptop, has scanned with their mobile device, and they're now controlling what's on their laptop screen with their phone. It has everything, right? It has all those elements of storytelling that I referenced on the previous slide. It's also bringing together rich media, video, gaming, mobile, right? Real attachment going on here. And it actually had an average interaction time of around 1:40, this particular ad unit. So consumers really enjoyed it. But this is kind of what I'm talking about. I mean, those examples, you know, are very specific, and especially this one, right? It's a little different when you talk about movie premieres, but it's something that you can maybe take out of here to think about. All right, well, here's a different way we can think about creative concepts. I mean, how do we think about this in relation to users wanting to participate, wanting to interact, wanting to feel immersed into it, and having some form of impact? And through that metric of interaction time, it did have impact. So let's go back and pull this all together. Lucas, our guy from earlier in the presentation here, he's actually seen that masthead. And he actually played the game. Right, so he's our ideal consumer here. We know that he's in Stuttgart. And it's raining, which is true because it's actually raining outside at the moment as well here. But he gets an ad. You know, after a search, right, a rainy day is a great day to go see a movie, which is actually true. Lots of people go see movies when the weather is bad. And then we bring that all the way to location aware. He gets the text, the directions to the cinema that he just bought the tickets for, acquired the tickets, and he goes and sees the film. Right? And this is a very perfect example of what I talked about, how you can tie together an interesting creative that tells a story, gets some interaction, uses the data, the historical data, knowledge, being aware that the user that he actually saw this ad, interacted with it, to get to an eventuality, which is what we really want here, and that is a conversion. So, summarizing here, there are three things to walk out of the presentation with here. This notion of adding behaviors to demographics and context is such a no-brainer. We saw the data that supports just how impactful it can be. You never know. You might be up here next year talking about your 10,000% lift from adding this data. I'm sure it's possible. The second component is the technology. Being able to do this at scale, right? Being able to actually do this in an automated fashion, right? Manually, this is impossible. Manually is what we've done over the past 10 years. Recently, it's become more automated, and it's going to continue to get more automated. But it's necessary, it's requisite. You need the machines to crunch this data, to spit out the segments that you should be targeting against specific creative messages, and to do that dynamically, all in real time. Right? The best plan that you can put together has to change the moment it goes out the door and begins to be served live. And then finally, engaging. And I'll reference this point again. Creative budgets need to catch up to what consumers are demanding from the internet, and that is a relevant experience with content that speaks to them, that cannot be done with one creative concept, can't be done with two, can't even be done with dynamic as it's being deployed today, because we know that dynamic is being used, and we've seen the folks that are using dynamic, and we know that the majority of what we see is irrelevant to us. So, my three. I hope you've sort of taken, if you come out with these three things, you start to think about how you use data, how the technology can benefit you, and how we can tell better stories. This is how we move the ball forward. This is how we continue to change the industry in the favor of consumers. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much for coming along from the organization.